Can you guys hear me? Hello, good evening. Can you guys hear me? All right. Um, good evening, everyone. We're going to continue our React JS class today, and I have an understanding that we've in our previous class with one of our instructor, David. He walked us through all the basic of React JS, how to set up React and how to install Node.js and how to set up React.js projects. So, which it's something we are going to pick up from there today, right? All right. I'm reading through all the messages. So, um, okay. So, I will walk us through the further structure one more time, how to install it. I will basically bootstrap a a new React application. So okay, can you guys give a feedback on the last class? What did you guys Are you guys having any difficulties on the project? How to set it up? How to run a React application? So I can just give us a recap on that. Okay, that's good. That's good. All right. So I will continue from there. So I can understand that everybody were able to set up Node.js, because you guys need to let me show us React website, how to set it up, all the basic things we need. Okay. All right. So the installation, this is the installation of the React. What we need to do. Okay. Starting a new React project. Let's read on that. Okay. So the first thing we need to do is install Node.js. This is where you install Node.js. Node.js installation. So you need to download and install it. Can you guys see my screen? Okay. Someone said it's blurry. So, okay. So, this is where you download Node.js. You select the OS you're running. If you're running on Windows, you select Windows. If you're running on Mac, Mac OS, you select Mac OS and on Linux, then you install it. So when you install Node, you can verify if Node is running on your PC by opening your terminal to check the Node version you're running, if the Node is actively running on the system. Because after a successful installation, you need to be able to check if it's running. So mm, all right. So we type. Can you guys see my screen? Or it is blurry. You check the Node version by typing Node. Okay, we type Node. If Node is installed on the system, you'll be able to check when you type Node on your terminal or on your command prompts, anyone you are using, you will be able to get the information of the Node environment you are running on. Can we understand that? So when that is installed, we can also, let's go back to, okay. So let's go back to the documentation. So I can also check the npm we are running on. Npm -v. So when you have these two things set up on your Windows, you can now have access to create a React application. Um, I'm very sorry about the noise. So now let's try and bootstrap a new project on React. So we can create a new application by typing the npx create a React app. Yeah. So I'll do that right now to show us using Expo. No. So I'll create an application now. So I'm trying to give us a recap. Yes, so you can access your terminal directly from your VS Code, or you can search. If you're on window, you can search for, you can type cmd on your window to access the command prompt, or if you choose to use VS Code terminal, anyone that works. Also, so but I'll prefer using the VS Code terminal. So here is the code to create a React application, to set up a React app. So you type npx create React app with the folder name. So npx create React app, and the name of the project, the name we want to name it. Let me name it new app. If I name it new app, npm we React, we are going to get a folder named new app pre-installed with all the necessary packages that make up the React application, everything in it. So this is the app, this is the folder, and all the necessary folder structures for the React and the packages to run it. If I open the package.json, this is what we have inside it. The basic one, we have the React library, the React DOM, React scripts, and other testing library for the React, for the unit testing. So, and these are configuration to run it, default configuration to run the React application. So my screen is blur. How about now? So the installation is still going now. So someone said you're getting npm error. Can you be specified about the error you are getting, or you can copy the error you are getting, any error you are getting? If you cannot understand this, you can paste it or share a screenshot of the error you are getting in the group, or you can either copy the error, you can copy the text in the error and paste it in the Google and type npm error and paste the error. So that will give you access to a lot of articles, Stack Overflows, and any other article that might get you solve the problem. So that's all. All right. So I've been able to create a new React app. This is it. Now I need to. This is the new application. So I need to run the app. So when you install a new React app, these are the basic things you will get: instruction, npm start to start the application, npm run build to build and compile the application for production environment, and to test. If you have unit testing, you write unit testing for the app, or testing all the components and the functional part of the application. So you write test for that. So you can use npm run test to do that. So now all this command is written inside the script JSON in the package.json file. These are the command. So if you type npm start underneath, this is the command being run. React script start. Okay, so we are not going to be we are not going to let that take much of our time because of what we have to cover in today's class. So let me just run this for us once and for all and see what will happen. npm starts. Oh, I need to check into the folder. All right, so I've been able to run the app, and this is what we get: the basic React welcome page. So this is the app. This is what it render app.js. This is the code. And one thing about this React is that the moment you make any changes, auto reload functionality comes with it. It's auto compile and render any changes you made. So if I update this now, edit, if I put another tag here, h1, yeah, welcome to React class. If I save this and go back to the web page, this is what we get: welcome to React class. So just simple. Okay. All right. Someone is requesting for some code. What code are you requesting for? What command are you requesting for? Maybe I can just paste that. I can recap on that. So, all right, let's focus on today's class before we. So, I remember the last class you guys stopped at components. What are components in React? So, I'm going to dive deep into it today. So, what are components? So, we have an understanding that a component in React is just like, let me give us a basic and layman understanding of what component is. A component is just um, a piece of code we write to run as a single component and can be reused in another place. So that's like a layman understanding of for that. Now, but the standard definition of a component and how it works in React. So components are building blocks of any React application. Components are reusable, like I said. You have write a piece of code that can be reused in other places. Components let you split the UI into independent. When we are here talking about React, everything is all UI. This is front end. We are here, so we are dealing with UI. So all piece of code we are typing, we are compiling, we translate to UI, and to save us the stress of rewriting every piece of code, because I keep saying this in every class. We have a procedure. Don't repeat yourself. You have to be able to identify what you are repeating in every piece of code you are writing. So if you find yourself that you are rewriting things in your code, this is the advantage of using React JS. Previously in HTML, CSS, you guys have been doing before. If you do If you write a code, your footer code, you paste it across index file, about page, and every HTML file or website you are building. But now, React comes to solve that problem for us and many more problems. All right. So we have two types basically. I believe you guys got introduced to this in the last class: functional components and class components. So we're going to talk more about that today. So, and this is a basic example of a functional component, where functional components are JavaScript functions. It's just like its names implies, function. So you write a piece of code in a function class, in a function, and you execute it as a page itself, or you pass it to another piece of code to execute. So now this is an example of a class component. A class component, a regular ESS class, like just the normal class we're familiar with in JavaScript. So, but all it's why it's different is because it extends the component's features in the React. So using this code will translate and render to us as an HTML, as a React, to display in the HTML. So you know it's different from the functional approach, though they have more difference. But we're going to be talking about that soon, because one supports we have something we call hooks. We can tie them to each other, and when you're using other components, you can decide to be using component months or months and all, and you can decide to be using use effects if you want to use hooks. All right. So these are part of the thing you guys discussed in the last class, and I'm aware that you guys need to work on this as a class activities. So I want to believe that every one of us we're able to do this, get this out of the last class, and you practice this on your end. So am I getting any feedback on this? Are you guys able to create a React application and test how the class component and functional components works? All right. So if so, we are going to be repeating that again today. So to share more insights on it. Okay. So um all right. This is an more understanding on how React component actually works. So it represents a small chunks of user interface in a web page. Like we said, we write a code that translates to UI. So the primary job of a React component is to render its user interface and update it whenever its internal state is changed. Like what happened here? The moment we had a text, any piece of code here is changed. React will render it. Welcome to React class components. So the moment we do this, it will render. This is it. It will render. All right. So now what are the key takeaway from here? What are the functionalities of React components? Initial rendering of the user interface, like we all see, and management and handling of events. This is very crucial. And good thing we talked about JavaScript events very well in our previous class. We work ourselves through it and we practice a lot of events, which I'm confident that by now we will not be having any issue with this, because we are going to be doing a lot of event activity inside your React application, writing and building cool stuff. You can separate your events, wrap it up in the components, write listeners, put them as a separate code, and you can also reuse them. So everything will now come in together now. All the things we've been learning so far, we are going to be putting them together like pieces of what's it called? Put the pieces together. All right. So updating the user interface whenever the features, whenever the internal state is changed. Yeah. For example, what we change now, what React understand, save in the memory is changed the moment you update the piece of code. So what happens is that we have something we call auto reload. I believe in our previous experience with HTML, JavaScript, and CSS, what we normally do is to write the code and refresh it ourselves. So now React comes into solving that for us. React component that accomplish the features using three concepts: properties, event, and states. This is very beautiful. The properties enable the components to receive inputs. You define the properties in your components. Example, you define the properties to hold the name or the list you want to render on the component. So the properties we listening for that. We receive the input to pass to the component. So you can define a separate class, a separate function, and pass the parameter you want that function to use and display. So you pass it to it. So events enable the components to manage DOM events and user interaction. Do you guys remember the DOM object model we had previously, where we are manipulating the DOM, the user interface using JavaScript. This is where React comes in. So React, we understand, we hold the DOM object, the whole UI as a DOM. So we can now be changing it ourselves. And also state, beautiful. We can store properties in state. We can manipulate, render, and set different, we can perform different functionalities on the UI by just updating and set the state. Let me give us an example. Maybe you on a landing page, on a web page, when a user click on register, the form, the input form we want to display to the user is just first name, last name, email, password, and submit button. So now the state will be registered by default. But maybe let's assume they click on login. We want to hide or change the form for the user. Now, previously we are going to do this thing in a separate page, but now React comes in for us to do this. You can write all these things, put them in a single component or multiple components, and you write them together using component base and use the state to manage it. When the page loads, the default state should be register. But the moment the user click on login, the page will not need to reload. All you need to do is just re-render the DOM and replace the components you want to use. Don't worry, we are going to practice everything for sure. All right, so this is an example of a functional component and a class component, like the name implies, the class. And I explained the other time, the class component will extend the React component from the library. All right, so let me show us how this works. So are we able to set the React up? Because I want to dive into the code right now and show us how the functional components works, how we can define the functional component and the class component together. I'm going to render the class component first and followed by the functional components. I need a feedback. Can you guys hear me very well? And my screen is not blurry. I'm waiting on the feedback. Oh. No. We are not downloading React application. It's not like you are downloading it. You are installing the Node.js because it runs on the Node version manager, npm. So nvm, Node version manager. Okay, you guys are unable to set it up. Okay, let us go through that one more time. I have a lot of stuff for us to practice and learn today. A lot. And I don't want this to hold us down. All right, everybody can navigate, or by default you can just Google search install Node.js. When you Google search how to install Node.js. Unable to set it up, npm error. So what we need to install, all we need to do to install is just install Node.js. So Google search install Node.js. So when you Google search how to install Node.js, you download the Node.js on your system. So when you download it, you install the app. Or you can just, this is it's very straightforward. You select the, I don't know how Node.js is being rendered on the type of machine we are running, maybe on Windows. So when you install Node, you verify if Node is installed on your PC by checking the Node version and the npm version. So when you're done with that and it's successfully installed Node, you will now run. So I saw somebody say posted npm create react app. It's not npm create react app, it's npx. Let me show you. So you can Google search how to create react app. So you can see a lot of articles on how to solve this problem. If you don't understand what is being written inside react app, you can check the w3 school to understand how to set it up. You can also check other websites. See npx. So you navigate to the folder you want to use, npx create react app. The same app, you name the app you want to use. Okay, so, and I also show us the code here before we start. This is it. This is the syntax. Syntax and example. So syntax here shows app name, the app name you want to use, and this is an example. So when you do this, you get a folder name with the name app, the app name you type. Then you get a folder with a complete installation of the React inside it. All right, let me get back to what we are doing. I really want us to cover a lot of things into this class. So this is the node. I'm closing everything. All right. Okay. So we are welcome. So I will create a new class. Let me name it user class. Okay, let me name it user.js. So the user.js, we are meant to render it. We are going to design a component here. We define a component here and render it on the UI. So the syntax for the functional components. So let us import from React, and we define a function user. I hope my screen is not blurry. A function user, and we export the default. We export user. So now React will understand this as a component. All right. So we now want this to display as a component for us. So let us assume we want it to display a simple text like this. H1 hello world. So this is a simple functional component. A simple functional component. And we need to include it in our base class, which is this. So if I comment this React and the app components and import the user components like this, so the app will refresh, and all I need to do is go back to the application, our React app. Can we all see this? Hello world. This is what we get. Simple functional components. That's all. But we can choose to use a class component instead of this. So what we need to do is define the class user, then extend components from React. So the components is being imported from the React library. Then we do the same. We render and return. What do you want to return? H1 hello world class components. So now that will automatically refresh. So if we go back to the web page, this is what we get: hello world class components. Simple. Now let's go back to the manual. So we're going to move on to properties inside React. What do we understand by properties? The other time we said part of the things that make three components are three properties, three functionalities of React that make up React components: properties, states, and events. So now we are treating the properties right now. So React enables developers to create all these dynamic, right? So every component can have an attribute similar to the HTML attributes, and each attribute values can be accessible inside the component using the properties. direct English. Every properties inside the components, inside the HTML attributes, everything that is being rendered inside that component, the HTML, we can access everything using the properties. We can pass value, we can pass data into the component using properties. Now, let us see what happened here. We define a user class, a class component. Can we all see what we have here? A class component that return the name that is being passed into it. Can everybody see what I'm sharing? So this is the class component, class user, and return any name that is passed to the component. Simple now. Where we execute the class, where we implement it, we pass the name we want it to render. Now let us implement that. We are going to see something now. So hello word. Instead of using word, let us render the name props.name, hello name, comma, welcome to React class components. Now this component is required to pass a name into it. So what we will now do is that over here we can now declare a name equals to Adewale. Now Adewale is being passed into this class component and display and being used inside the HTML attribute. We pass a name into the component and we are using it inside our HTML attributes. Now let's go back to the web browser and see that. Can we see? Hello Adewale. This Adewale is not static, it's dynamic. Any value that is being passed into the component, into that component, will be displayed over here. Let me show something one more time. Inside there, we can define user name John. Can we all see that? If I refresh it, can we see? Hello John, welcome to React class components. So I'm using the components multiple times with different data. We can achieve this because we define a component that is reusable and define a properties that can accept anything, is not static. Do we all get that? Um, whew. Hello, are we here? Um, okay. What do I need to recap? What do I need to rephrase? I understand how this might be to us because we are just getting started with React, and setting it up might be a very key issue because of the environment we are running, probably Windows. So I will definitely share us a details notes on how to set it up and treat any error we are facing. Okay, so let me continue. So now we've talked about properties. We can define multiple properties inside a component. It's not just one. We can define multiple properties, but let me show us how to handle that inside a functional component. It's very simple. All you need to do is just define the value we need, right? Mm, but define the value we need. Oh, mm, I'm coming. Hold on. Let's get back to this. I don't want this to hold much of our time. All right. So let us. Okay. So let me explain one thing for us. Why we have something we call default props. So we can, instead of passing the value to it, instead of defining that properties to be static, to be dynamic, we can define a default properties to it. Maybe like a configuration of the class. So we can implement something like this to the class. Mm, user dot. Oh, all right. So the properties of name. Okay, the properties of class to be React. So instead of using this class as React, we can get it from the props. So the React is no longer static anymore. We are getting it from the props that we define to load with the class. All right. Ah, it's not showing. I'm coming. So dot log all the props. This keyword. Ah, Is here now. Oh, it's class. The key is class, not React. So I mistake to define the React as a variable, but I define it as class. The key is class. So now this is what we get. React class. All right. So now I want us to read up more because we are going to be testing our knowledge on, we are going to be building and testing our knowledge more on the components, because everything we are going to be dealing with inside React is component based. We are going to be designing a lot of components, and we can achieve all this if we understand how components actually work. You can build a whole, you can model a component to achieve whatever we want. For example, let me explain more about this. Let's assume we want this component to basically display information about the user. Now we print this to accept these properties from the user, and from we accept the properties while rendering the component. We can also accept more information. We can decide to display the age, the info, more info about the user. We can display age, get it from the properties. From the properties, props.age. We can also get more info from it. Occupation. So we are expecting more info, age, occupation from this place where we are rendering it. We are expecting age 20. We're expecting occupation driver, engineer. Now we can now reload this place and get everything. We can do a whole lot of things with this. Also, we can define all the properties. We can compile everything. Let's assume we want everything to comes in as a JSON. We can define this. This is what I mean by that. We can define something like this. We can define const user1 info and user2 their info to be this. This is user1 info and user2 info. We can achieve a lot of things using JavaScript. I want to show us some things right here. We can do it this way, and also we can do it this way. all our JavaScript knowledge, we can implement that right here. Put it to test over here. So I want to show us one thing now. Now, this over here, we can decide to pass all these properties. We are spreading all these properties over here. It's working. What we design, what we implement right here is the same thing as this. Using this, let me show something though. User 2 dots. It's the same thing as this. Because the first one over here, I'm using spread operator. And over here, I'm implementing it directly. So JavaScript give us a lot of flexibility to achieve a lot of things. Depends on how well do you understand it. Two dots, occupation. Can we all see what happened here? This line 23 is still the same thing as this line over here. But what I'm doing over here is that I specifically specify the properties I needed over here. But right here, since I understand that everything defined here is still the same thing, the component is accepting. All I do is just use a JavaScript operation called spread operator. I spread this into the components, and it will work perfectly. Now, I also want to implement something for us by practicing all the control structures we've learned before in the JavaScript. Instead of repeating the same thing over here, we can modify this to something like this using an array of objects. I believe everyone right here will go through the same thing, because all those JavaScript basic knowledge we walk through, everything is what we are going to be implementing. Now, I define the class, I define all the data, user data, into a single variable, that array of objects. Now, I can now mimic this thing over here to render everything. I can go through it, loop through it one by one. All I need to do is just do something like this. To return this. This right here, like this. So now, using this method right here, I compile all the data into a single variable array to reuse the components number of times of objects that we have here, instead of writing the components one after the other. Can we all see? Still the same thing. If I add more information to this data here to be 3, if I had Sadiq, 40 years, chef. So I'm expecting these components to be rendered 3 times, and specifically pass the record into it. Can we all see that? We have three. The component is rendered three times. All right. We are going to have a break right now, and we're going to go on a short break. So when we are back, we're going to walk ourselves through the implementation of styling it using the CSS, applying the CSS style to, we're going to style everything for us. So we should be back very shortly. Thank you. All right. Are we all back? Um, Hello. Are we all back? Am I audible? Can everybody hear me? All right. So now React JS, everything on the front end part to beautify our front end, we have to depend on the CSS, right? So how do we tie these things to React? How does it work, right? And I'm here telling us it's not like we are going to be writing. We can decide to write CSS, a whole lot of CSS ourselves, while when we understand how React render and inject CSS into the components, into the environment, how it works. And also we can leverage couples of um design system like material UI, like material UI and ant design, a whole lot of design system compiled, written, component based system written in React. So we can leverage all these things and also add more of our own personal design to it. But all these things will be possible if we understand how React system works, React design and styling system works. Hello, can everybody hear me? Are you guys seeing can you guys see my screen? Okay, can you guys see my screen? Can you guys hear me? All right, let's carry on. So now React allow components to be styled using CSS through class name attributes. Like we all understand, putting CSS, we understand that in our previous class, in our previous lesson, while we are working with HTML CSS, we practice how to inject CSS into an HTML file, HTML design. But now we are doing something more advanced than that. A JavaScript engine that that read HTML CSS as one system. So now the knowledge you gain from how HTML works, how CSS works, how JavaScript works, we are using it all together in one place. So now it's not something that will be different. All we need to do is just understand, okay, when we are working with CSS and HTML, this is how we are doing it. We are now going to transfer the same knowledge to React. Okay, so now like I said, CSS style sheets, the normal style sheet we normally use, we create a new file, a style sheet. In our HTML, we define the key, which will be the class name. We understand that previously in the HTML file, all we need to do is just give it an ID of adding the ID, and inside the CSS file, we reference it by hash, or we define it by class. In the CSS file, we reference it by dot. Do we all understand that? But now it's a different game. We are defining it as a class name. Now we can now apply inline styling the same way you can define inline HTML design or create a CSS module, a locally scoped CSS style. So this is the recommend one using CSS module. Or we can also use a style component, the component level styles. This is like more advanced. And we can also define a SAS style sheet. All this one will be a trans compile file. But we are going to be focusing more on the CSS style sheets, the inline and CSS module in our class. And we are going to practice everything in this class. Are you guys there? Can you guys hear me and understand what I'm saying? I need to get the feedback. Hello, are you guys there? Can you people see my screen over here, Misha? All right. So now I'm going to implement a design. I'm going to implement a design right here and add it to the web page that we design over here. So let us just follow what we have here. So like the normal design. So I'm going to create a CSS file right now. All right, so let's do that. So we have a user file, user.js. Now we need to define a user.css. So user style sheet. So let me wrap everything in dev because what I'm bringing, I want to add the CSS to it. So okay, so inside the CSS, name it this way, and I can give it a class name. Can we see that? A class name. But what we've been working with before in the CSS and HTML, we work with something like this: class and ID. Do we all remember that? Class and ID. Whereby inside the CSS, all we need to do is just reference it by this. Reference it by hash or whatever we are using, the name, or dot name or whatever we are doing. But that's a different game. Now we are working with React. You define a class name, user style. You assign a name to it. So we want to give it all the objects inside, all the child properties inside the div to apply this to it. The font size of 14 and the color should be brown. So we will now follow the next line, which is to import the CSS file into that file, into the component. The CSS file, we've already defined that. We will now import the CSS file into the component so it can compile it together. So when it's compiling the component, it will also compile the CSS along with it. So I can now come here, import the file that user.css. That's all. So to compile it together. So if I refresh the web page, can we all see that? The style and everything is applied to it. So let me give it mm, 3 pixel. That's it. So I had more style to it. Mhm. All right. So now all the CSS style configuration that we want to add, we can add it inside the user.css by just importing the CSS file into the component. Do we all get that? All right. So the knowledge we have in the CSS and HTML file, we have inline CSS, external CSS, and internal CSS. We are going to implement all those things right here, but in React ways, in React format. So this is an example of inline CSS styling, whereby you define the CSS inside the components, not outside internal CSS, not outside external file, but internal inside the components. So let's do that right here. So we can define this. You can bring this here. So it should not work again. It will not work again. So by defining it, okay. So we no longer need to do this again. Since we do something like this, because it's no longer style anymore. All right. So we now put it this way. We define the style. The style, these dots, user style. All right. So it's not picking it. Okay. It's not. Let us pass it as a props. Let me pass it as a props outside. So we can define the style as a props. User style is expecting the style as a props. So I can define this here and pass the style. User style equals user style. So I pass it like that. So if I use color red, it should work now. Hold on. User style, user style. User props of user style. Um, I don't know why this is not rendering, but let me get back to this. Let's just implement the module style. So the CSS modules, this is the recommend pattern of injecting CSS style into the React, because the CSS modules provides a safest and easiest way to define the style. Because when you define the CSS style, it will compile the JS file and also compile the CSS file, because it's defined as a module. It is a module system. It's more similar to external file, defining it externally, because we're also going to define it externally. But right now, it's going to understand it as a modular system. File naming convention is very important. You define it as a .module.css. React to chain will pre-process the CSS file ending with .module.css, not just .css. .css, we the React engine will understand it as just another file. But because of the JSX, because JSX is what render the HTML file, HTML tags and everything, we understand it as regular file that needs to render with the HTML. But we are working with React. We need to leverage and use all the tools provided to us by the React engine. Now, any file that React engine locates as .module.css is going to compile it as a modular system in the React. So if we implement that right now, let me try and go back to this. Oh, this is why it's not working. I'm using style instead of class name. It's still not working. I don't get this. Anyway, let me define this as a module system dot module.css and import the module.css as a style. So instead of doing this, we import it as a style. Dot slash user dot module.css and use this as styles dot styles dot this. The item style defined in it. Come on. Stars. Cannot read properties of undefined user style. Okay, I need to remove this to go back to the default. So it's no longer why is it not reading this? Hmm. We can reshape it. All right. So come in when you do the compile. Oh, my screen is not sharing. Trying to share the screen back. Can you guys see my screen now? It's not showing. All right. User style. Still not showing. Oh, this is the issue. I'm referencing it using this dot, and it's no longer a props. It's no longer a props. So style props expect a mapping. I no longer need to map it now. Why is this? Is assigned without a value. Hold on. I don't understand why everything seems not to work. Oh, it shouldn't be class name, it should be style. Okay. Am I missing anything? I'm not. Oh, oh my god. I'm using style instead of class name. Well, I believe it should work now. Yeah, it's working now. God, this thing wants to stress me. All right. Can we all see that? If I turn this to, if I turn it to black, it should change. Can we see? If I turn it to red or maybe blue, it will change. Blue, deep blue. Mhm. Now it change. Can we all see that? Can we all see? So what happened is that when we are using the module style, it's no longer an inline. So it will be a class name with the style defined inside the module file. Inside the module file. Now, we can now add more style of our choice to this file and pick it and assign it to the class or the components we need. Now, we can reuse this style as a whole in another component that we define. All we need to do is just bring it in and reference it one by one after the other. Do you all understand? Okay, so mm, let me show us one more thing. Okay, so I think we need to now walk us through. I need to walk us through more. Okay, I think we have one more slide to treat. Okay, the life cycle, React component life cycle. This is very, very important whenever we are working with class components because we won't be working with functional components. If we are not working with functional components, we are not going to be treating the hooks because we no longer have time at hand. If I'm the one taking the next class, hooks is what we are going to talk about. We are going to work with ourselves on how to use hooks and play around with states. So let me explain what the React lifecycle means. So this React component lifecycle is basically for this particular slide, I'm explaining for the class components because everything we've been doing since morning is a class components. Now, we understand that React renders all the file components the way we implement it, the way we arrange it. When a component render, we want something to happen. When we change something on the component has already been rendered, now we now change something on the component. We still need something to happen. Let's assume when we click a button, the components are already rendered. We can see the button. Now, we now click the button. We still want something to happen. Now, if we are working with class components, all these things is basically tied to months, updating and on months. Do we all understand what I'm explaining? Hello, are you guys there? Hello? I'm not getting any feedback. Oh, can you guys hear me? Can you guys hear me? Okay. All right. So somebody just has a question. So how we can use style in React? I explained just now that we can define, we can use, we can create a .css file, which is something I implemented previously. And you can also use inline by defining it inline, or define it as a CSS module that can be, that React engine actually specify for us to use. Okay, I'm coming. Let us do something. Style. Font style. Italic. So this is an example of inline styling for the age. I want to assign the inline style for the age. So now if I start this up, because I figured that it's the only one I'm unable to implement since morning. So now age is now italic. Do we get? We have three ways which I have explained during this class. We've implemented using it as a style, where you define this style as a normal user.css without using it as a module.css, which is not recommended. We should use it as user.module.css and import it like this and reference all the style inside it by putting it where we want it. And we can also separate the inline into the style. For example, let us migrate this to the module. Class name style dot age italic. So if I bring it here, age italic, bringing it here, font style, age italic. If I run it now, p dot page age italic, am I doing anything wrong? Key props. Oh, this place. But we all understand what the message is. We can separate our components and also inject the style into it. Key. This place should be key. Key. Yeah. Let's give it the dot name. All right. So do we have any question? We should definitely have question. We should. Question. I know we are going to be treating a lot of things in the next class. And for us that we're unable to set up the React app, I'm going to share some documentation on how to properly set up the React and how to work with it. Can I recap on everything? But I just need to understand which parts do you guys want me to recap on. And also, we are going to provide the link to this slide because it's what you are going to be updating on every class. All right. Someone just said I should recap on the props. Okay. So I'm coming. Let me share the link right now. Um, all right. So what we understand by props, is that a properties is a value that is being attached to the component. So we can only access it inside the component. I don't know if we understand that. The properties is what we need inside the component. Whether is the properties that you want to make the component dynamic, or you want to abstract something, you can set it inside the props and pass it to the component, or predefine it when the component render. The properties also render with it. All right. So, and if you understand what, based on the explanation here, we define a component that accepts a name as a properties. So when we render it, when we reference it, we need to pass that name into the property, into the component. Let me show us inside the code base. Let me define another component. recap.js. So I can import React. Define a class recap that extend components, export default of recap. So here is a simple component. We're now going to return a basic property like. So now when this component render, we understand that these properties need to be passed into it because it is what is required inside the component. We cannot access this name. It's like a value defined inside the component. When we want to access the component, we need to pass it into it. Let me show us. If I comment this and implement the recap, I need to pass a name to it. Mike. This props is defined inside the recap component. Is required inside the recap component. So if I refresh the web page, we can all see it. It's just simple as that. Now, we can have as much as many properties defined inside the component to make the component work based on whatever we want to design. Whew. All right. Any more questions? We need more questions. Because going forward, we are going to be doing a lot of stuff in React, a lot. Because I believe when next time I will be taking the class, we are going to be building a project. We are going to build a well-functioning project. We can design a project like we can design a form where we input the data, our data, and design another component that display the data we accept from the user and display it on the second component. So we can achieve that by designing the form component, define properties in it, set it to state, and pass that properties we extract it from the state and pass it along to the next component to display the information. That's the overlaying of everything. That's just the overview of how it will work. So maybe next time, anybody that is free can go and practice it. You define two components. You pass data. You accept data from the props and from the user text box and pass it to the next component using the props. So somebody asked if you have many props and render them in the web, they're going to be calling them one by one. Yes. So properties is what is required for the component you need inside the component to load. So whenever you want to render the component, you pass it to it. Now you can define some properties to be required, and some properties might not be required. So it can be optional. Some might be required, some might be optional. Do you all understand? Do you all understand? All right. So I think this will be the end of the class for tonight, and I hope to see you in the next class. Thank you very much, and have a good night.